Welcome to part 2 of diagnosing and repairing this M156 engine from a W204 C63. In part 1, we diagnosed a broken cylinder head bolt as the reason for our coolant loss. And in this video, I'm going to continue stripping the engine, removing both cylinder heads and all the ancillary parts, inspecting everything as we go, and then taking the cylinder heads to the machine shop to be skimmed. So the engine and gearbox are out of the car, engine is on the stand as we've previously shown, rocker cover is just placed back on for now, just to keep any dirt out. But we're going to strip down all the front end, get all these pulleys out of the way, water pump, thermostat, oil filter housing, AC compressor, alternator, secondary air valves, intake manifold, exhaust manifold, everything that needs to come off in order to remove the cylinder heads. First step that I like to do is get the wiring loom out the way, get that placed to the side nice and safe. And this, as I mentioned in the last video, is a good time to go around and take photos of everything so you know the routing of all the wiring, and it's just good reference for when you put everything back together at a later date. The very first thing I'm going to do before I forget and make a mess at a later time, just drain the engine oil. You'll be able to see just how creamy it is. Oh, there we go. That is neat coolant coming out. That is definitely not right. Exhaust manifold off on the driver's side. As you can see, it's pulled some of the studs out with the nuts, but that's not an issue. We can separate them and then put the studs back in and then put new nuts on. Fortunately, none of them are broken. Obviously they have been out before because it's got IPE headers on it. It's a little bit tedious because you can't get a socket onto all the bolts because of the way the 4 branches of the manifolds work. So some of it has to be done with a spanner, and literally like quarter of a turn at a time. But they are off. We'll get the alternator off, just working around getting the loom off. Knock sensor, there's one either side hidden behind these shields, so just get those off now. Once you get that shield out of the way, you can then see the plug and another bolt holding the actual knock sensor to the block. So you've got the same again this side, little shield that comes off, knock sensor, unbolts from the block, just letting the rest of the oil drain out. There was some oil in there, along with it mostly being coolant. And this is a common issue with the M156 engine that we see on nearly all of them. So you've got your lower sump pan here, which can leak. You've then got this upper sump section, which is this aluminium piece from here to here, sealed all the way along. There's also a small sump plate on the front, which looks like it's weeping slightly. So they can leak from here, they can leak from here, where the upper sump bolts onto the lower crankcase. But the worst one, in terms of how much work it is to do, is where they leak along this seam here. So this is technically the upper and lower half of the block that sandwiches the crank together. And it is usually always like this. It's just a very minor weep, not even a leak as such. It's unusual to even get a drip on the floor from it, but you just get this kind of sweating of oil around this area. I probably will recommend on this one that we do the lower as a minimum and then see what he wants to do with this. Some people won't go ahead and do it because obviously even from the point we're at now with the engine out, it's quite major work. You need the flywheel off, you need to flip the engine upside down, separate it, get the oil pump out, and there's quite a lot of bolts have to be replaced. So it's a fairly expensive repair, even in addition to what we've already done. So we'll have a chat with the customer, see what he wants to do. You can see here it's weeping slightly from the lower sump there. Now would be the time to do it whilst the engine's out, but a lot of people kind of just live with it, keep an eye on it and clean it off, because it never really progresses into an actual leak that's dripping oil. It always just sweats oil, as you can see. So I've got the wire and loom mostly disconnected all the way around the back. And the last step is to take the inlet manifold off, because the wire and loom actually runs under the inlet manifold, sits down in the V. So we're just going to undo these Torx bolts down here. These are one-time use because they're aluminium, so need to be careful undoing those, and also careful when we torque them up as well. I've seen this little solenoid on the front here has got a load of super glue over it, so we'll have to have a closer look at that. I suspect someone's snapped one of the barbs off the top and then tried to glue it back together at some point, so that'll need to be replaced. So there we have it, inlet manifold off. As you can see, this is where the wiring loom sits, down in here. So that's the reason why you have to take the inlet manifold off to get the loom off. PCV valve, which sits in there and then goes into the back of the inlet manifold. A customer has told me that this has been replaced recently, So we'll keep hold of that one. They're also on back order currently, so we wouldn't be able to get one anyway. We've got these sound deadening pieces under the manifold, which just pull out, and then the loom should now just lift completely off if I can get it just around this coolant hose. Try not to catch it on anything. There we go. There is the complete wiring loom. And now the engine will be much nicer to work on with no wiring in the way. You probably don't need to go to the extent of fully stripping it off, but for the time it takes, it's worth it. We'll get the alternator off next, strip some of the front end down. I think I've mentioned in a previous video that when I do these, I do strip off more than is necessary. It's not me trying to make work or charge the customer extra or anything like that. It's just really to make my life easier and to make a nice job of it. Main reason for taking the loom off is when I spin the engine onto its side, and when I've got, especially when I've got the heads off, if I'm trying to get any remaining coolant or oil out of the block, if the loom's not there, it can't get covered in oil, it can't get covered in coolant. It's safer, there's less chance of breaking any plugs. So I like to strip them right down as much as I can, clean everything up, and then when it all goes back together, we know that everything is 100%. The customer has also told me with this one that he's looking to supercharge it in the future. So he really wants to go through everything now whilst the engine's out, just make sure it's all up together. Please forgive the continuity in this video, as I'm currently just on and off this in between other jobs. This morning I've had a supercharged 204 C63 in for some work, and now this afternoon I'm back on with this. I've got all the ancillaries off the engine, so it's basically stripped down as far as it needs to be for the moment, and now we will take the rock covers off, which are just loosely placed on there. Get those off, and we'll begin the interesting part of stripping down the internals of the engine until we get the heads off. Both rock covers are off, so we can now see the hydraulic lifters. Very slight wear on them, not particularly bad. They are going to get replaced, or we're 99% sure at this point that they're going to be replaced, but regardless, one thing I always like to do is keep them in order. So when I'm stripping an engine down, even if I think the parts are going to be replaced, I will still keep them in the order that they were in, just in case for any reason they end up going back together. Another thing I like to do is I don't throw away anything. Any bolts, even if they're one-time use, gaskets, any parts that I think are going to be replaced, I will keep them all either in order or at least in a box to the side. And not to say that they'll be reused, but it's more so for reference. If you pull the bolts out, or you pull the head gaskets off and you just throw them away, and then the new ones turn up, on occasion you might look at them and think, oh, they look slightly different. And it's good to have the old parts as a reference. You can match up the head gaskets, you can match up any bolt seals, make sure they're the same, or if they look different, is there a reason why they're different? Is it a modified part? Is it an upgraded part? But if you've thrown them away before the job is done, so I will literally keep all of the old parts until the engine's back in the car, finished, done, running. If you've thrown them away, then you've got no reference, and it can be very difficult to check those kind of things. So for now, I'm going to pull all of the hydraulic lifters out. Got the trays set up. These are just baking trays, but they work well for keeping these in order, as long as you don't shake them around too much. I was always told not to use a magnet when removing these. So what's that? Bank 1 intake. So we've got intakes on the inside, exhaust on the outside. You should just be able to grip them with your fingers. They should slide out nice and easily. If they're stuck at all, then you need to investigate why. They should spin nicely in the head, and they should come out easily. They can stick slightly because of the kind of suction of the oil, but they really shouldn't take much force at all to get out. So I'll go ahead now and remove all of those. That is all of the hydraulic lifters removed, so now you can see the valve springs. Next step, we're just going to take this timing chain tensioner out. So as you can see, there is a oil and coolant mixture in here as well. Just going to remove this just to take the tension off of the chain. So what we need to do next in order to get the head off is we need to remove this gear, and there is a 5mm Allen head bolt inside, and then there's a pin that basically holds that gear in place. So we need to remove the bolt, and we need to remove this threaded pin. So there is a special tool that is required to do that. And then we need to remove the timing chain guide pins, which is this one here, and then 2 on the other side. You've got 2, you've got 3 which are smaller, 1 which is bigger. They can get corroded inside the threads. There's a special tool to pull these out as well. So what I like to do is just run this little tap that I've got. I just like to run that in and out to clean the threads up before I use the tool to pull them out. So this is what you'll need for the top gear threaded piece, which will then screw inside that gear. Bearing in mind I've removed the bolt from inside there. I've then got a bolt which will thread into that, and then they are quite tight. It's going to be difficult to show on camera, but you need to grab hold of this and pull that out. I've got it moving now, so just need to pull the center piece out. The gear will stay, it won't drop or fall away. So we can just remove this whole pin that holds it in place, like so. And then so what you're going to do with the timing chain guides is you need a tool similar to this, which will pull the pins out. So I've cleaned up the threads in there, so this will go in nicely. You're going to wind that one in all the way. Take your 8mm spanner and just nip it up. You want it to be a good amount of threads inside, because if you don't thread it in far enough, you may pull the threads out. And then what we're going to do is just tighten this one down until we're touching, and then we're going to take our 18, and if we do this one up, it shouldn't take a huge amount of force, but if you can see, it starts to pull the pin. You might need to reset the tool a couple of times because you might run out of how far it can pull, but see, with the right tool they come out very easily, and then you'll feel it go loose. You'll probably get to a point where you can pull, there we go, you can just pull the remainder of the pin. And there's one, repeat that 3 more times. This one uses the same tool, just with a different fitting in the end that has a slightly different size thread on it. So there we have both pins out the front, and this piece out as well. So now essentially the head is ready to unbolt. We're going to unbolt it in a crisscross pattern, same as we will when we torque it back down, so that we relieve the pressure evenly, other than the one which is obviously already broken. So one thing I wanted to talk about on this video is I've had messages from people for quite a while now asking about the 1x1 method of doing these head bolts. And for anyone that doesn't know, the 1x1 method is, as it sounds, you remove the rock covers, remove the cams with the engine in the car, and you replace one head bolt at a time. So this only works if the head bolts haven't already failed, and you're just doing it preemptively because you expect them to fail, if it's got the early style head bolts in it still. So what you do, remove the cams, you remove one head bolt, you then fit the new head bolt in its place and torque it up to spec. You then follow the pattern and do one at a time. And I won't do this, and the reason I won't do this is purely the risk. I'm not saying it doesn't work. There are people clearly that have done it this way, and it can work if you're lucky. But this engine, for example, and the last one I did, one head bolt has failed. Only one, the rest of them are still fine, they're still torqued to spec. And with one head bolt failing, the oil and the coolant have mixed. The head gasket has failed. Admittedly, yes, the engines were running when that happened, so the oil and coolant were under pressure. But I just do not think that it's the right way of doing it. When you remove one head bolt, you are relieving the pressure on that section of the head gasket. And then when you're torquing the new head bolt in, you're just hoping that it's going to reseal again. And like I say, in some cases people have done this and it works. But for me, as a business, the risk doesn't make sense really. If I agree to doing it 1x1 and then the head gasket fails shortly afterwards, there's just too much liability for me, because then I'll end up in this situation. I'll end up having to pull the engine, pull the heads, replace everything, probably free of charge. So if you're doing it yourself and you want to take that risk, then I understand it. I still don't think it's the right way of doing it. I don't know of any other engine in any manufacturer where anyone would deem it acceptable to replace one head bolt at a time. It's just simply not the right way of doing it, although it may work. So that is the reason for me doing it this way. Admittedly, both of the ones that I've done recently, the head bolts have failed anyway. So regardless, you need to replace them all. You need to replace both head gaskets. I think I mentioned, yes, you can do it in the car, but the labour time probably isn't much different, to be honest. It's a lot more awkward to do it in the car. It's harder to clean everything up. I think you can make a nicer job of it by replacing the engine, and both of my clients with this one and the previous one were quite keen to carry out other work at the same time, so it just made sense to pull the engine and do everything in one hit, so we know it all goes back together and it'll be good for years to come. I've drained the block from this point here. You can drain the coolant out of the block, and then I've also tilted the stand so this head is upright. It will just make it easier when I come to remove it. So now I'm going to fully remove the head bolts, and then we will lift the head off. And there we have it, one cylinder head removed. Everything looks fine at first glance, a little bit of carbon on the pistons as you would expect. Cylinder walls looking good from what I can see, which we would also expect because we didn't actually even get any coolant going into the cylinders. We didn't get any smoke or anything like that. It just mixed from the oil and coolant passageways in the block. So tensioners down at the front here. This is the one, guides down at the front here. This is the one that the tensioner pushes on. So you can take these out. Just need to be gentle with them if you plan to reuse them, because the plastic can get brittle. It is quite discoloured, that one as well. And next step is to do the same on the other side. So there we have it, both cylinder heads off. I'm going to drop them off to the machine shop early next week. They will strip them, clean them, carry out a light skim, as little as is possible. I will provide them with new stem seals, so they'll get fully rebuilt, all the valves reseated if they need to be. Basically just a really good refresh back to stock condition. In the meantime, I'll pull the head gaskets off. I will clean up the face of the block and clean up the pistons, and have a chat with the customer about how far he wants to go with this in regards to the minor oil leaks that we found here on the lower sump section and the lower crankcase, because even from this point it's still quite considerable amount of work and cost in order to address those. So we'll see if he wants to go ahead with that, or if he just wants to rebuild everything and focus on the top end. Thank you for watching part 2 of this M156 rebuild with a broken cylinder head bolt. The cylinder heads are currently at the machine shop. I've got parts on order from Mercedes, and I've got parts on order from 63 Motorsports. I've had a discussion with the customer about what he wants to do in regards to some of the extra parts, and also what he doesn't want to do. So we've come up with a plan. We're just waiting on some parts, and then check back soon for part 3. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe.